How's it going, guys? As you may know, testing has been open the last few days, with the new melee nerfs, immunity changes, and the crystal and gigantic caves. After testing out the new changes, Volibear and I decided to have some fun practicing rushing halls. So that's what we've been doing for the last 2.5 days straight. We decided to try out all classes and to give each class a fair chance, and I decided it'd be fun to share with y'all what we found. We based this tier list off of the ease of rushing all 5 pot rooms as well as Cult, and not necessarily off of which class can do it the fastest. This was all done on testing, as I mentioned, and both of us had 100 pets while doing this. In addition, we used whatever gear we spawned in with. I'll mention cases where having other items would have been especially helpful, or might have even changed a class's ranking. In general, there are 3 things that can make rushing halls easier for any given class. 1. Some form of sustain, whether this be a heal or just being extremely tanky and not taking much damage in the first place. 2. Speed. This is mostly for crusades. The worst part about rushing halls for most classes is dragging crusades into other rooms and then having to run back through them later. 3. Some form of CC, whether that be a slow, a para, a stasis, or a stun. For each of the classes, I'll briefly mention what makes the class good, where it struggles, and if I have some tips, I'll say those as well. So let's jump right into it with the S++ tier. This may surprise a lot of people, but what we found to be the easiest class by far to rush with is Priest. Specifically, Priest with T6 Book. And just to show you how insane Priest actually is, we decided to do a rush with only T6 Book, and it was still extremely easy, at least compared to the other classes. Speedy helps to keep you from dragging the Crusades and helps you to get out of all rooms quickly, and the amount of ridiculous situations you can get yourself out of just by spam healing is insane. I could see how Prot would be nice in some situations, but to be perfectly honest, it's completely unnecessary. Moving down to S tier, these classes are great, but again, Priest is just on a different level. First, we have Trickster. Trickster is the best class for rushing if you have a legendary pet or worse. Overall, I found Trickster to be much more difficult to get used to. It's definitely faster than Priest, and the ability to teleport over walls is really helpful for getting around the map efficiently. As far as speed goes, Trickster's unmatched. Another nice thing about Trickster is that you don't need to worry about Crusades or Spooky Boy at all. Just toss a clone as you run by and keep rushing. Now, this next one definitely surprised me. I was not expecting it to be anywhere near as good as it ended up being. But the only other class that I would put in S tier has to be Necro. During our time with Necro, we only failed a handful of attempts. Necro is basically just a slightly worse priest, but that doesn't mean it's bad at all. In fact, I'd probably feel comfortable rushing with Necro on live servers. Similar to priest, your healing lets you get out of some really bad situations. The main difference is that you're much slower than priest, and because of this, you end up dragging crusades around into really bad spots, which is where you end up having trouble occasionally. Having an Esben skull could be really helpful for this. This is easily the most fun class to rush on, and I really recommend everybody to try this one out. Moving down to A tier, these classes are still very good, but in general are a little bit more difficult to rush with. Firstly, we have Rogue. There really isn't too much to say about Rogue. It's basically just a worse Trickster. It can do all the same sorts of things that Trickster does, just a little bit worse. The long TP cooldown can be problematic, but the stealth can be useful. Stealth lets you chill out and heal in Crusade rooms, and makes Orcs rooms a little bit less scary as the Marios won't chase you. You mostly want to save your TP for Golem rooms if you can, in case you get petrified. Quiets can really mess Rogue up, so you want to make sure that you avoid them at all costs. The easiest way to do this is just to hug the walls in the grotto rooms. As far as I'm aware, if you're walking all the way against the walls, bats and rats cannot hit you at all. Last for A tier, we have Warrior. Personally, I really didn't like rushing on Warrior, but I can acknowledge that it's definitely A tier. High defense means that Orcs rooms are a breeze, and speedy means that you can outrun Crusades without dragging them around. Warrior's biggest problem is Golem rooms. I'd recommend not using speedy in these rooms. Take it a little bit slower and just focus on dodging the petrifies. Overall, very good class, but I personally would not recommend rushing on it unless you plan on doing Marble. Now we're moving to B tier. These classes are still good and can have decent consistency with rushing, but are much more difficult. In the top of B tier, we have Mystic. Mystic was surprisingly good. You have slightly higher than average speed at 60, and stasis is extremely useful. Take golem rooms slowly and try to stasis as much as you can. Focus on stasising the Marios and Oryx rooms, and you should have no problems with either of those rooms. Again, like most classes, Crusades are where you start to have issues. Honey Orb could help a lot to keep from dragging the Crusades around. One thing that should be noted for Mystic is how absolutely free cult rushing is on this class. Everything can be stasis. Mystic is easily the second most fun class to rush with. Definitely would recommend giving it a try. Next we have Paladin. Health is so important when rushing halls, and Paladin is the class that has the most. 55 speed, while still better than 50, can be a real pain, and you struggle to outrun Crusades, and can end up dragging them several rooms sometimes. Paladin was a lot of fun, and we ended up getting pretty darn consistent with it. It should be noted that this was nerfed Paladin on testing, so your seal didn't give you an instant heal like it does on live. Current Paladin on live is definitely A tier. Next we have Knight. Knight is just so tanky, and stun can be very useful. Oryx rooms are a joke due to your high defense and HP, and stun makes golem rooms much easier, although you still need to watch out for petrifies. Knight's main issue is Crusades. You end up dragging them all over the place, and getting back through those rooms can be a problem. You can try to stun them and run through if you really have to, but I wouldn't recommend it. Knight's speed is really the only thing that's holding it back. At the bottom of B tier, we have Ninja. Ninja is speed. That's all Ninja is. Sometimes you get through rooms before the enemies even realize you're there. However, you also explode when something breathes on you, so you have to be really careful. Take golem rooms slowly, otherwise you'll end up sprinting into petrify shots. And make sure to dodge the high damage shots in Oryx rooms. Other than that, Crusades hardly have time to chase you more than a singular tile, and grotto rooms you can usually run through before the big slime shots even make it halfway through the room. In addition, you can just keep rushing if you get spooky, as he's just too slow to really bother you. We debated putting Ninja higher on the list, as we ended up getting fairly consistent by the end, but you're just too squishy to be placed any higher than B tier. Now we move into C tier. These are the classes that I would not recommend rushing on. They aren't fun, they aren't particularly bad, they're just okay. At the top of C tier we have Assassin. Assassin is just a mundane trickster. That's really all there is to it. Golem rooms are the biggest problem. Focus on dodging the petrifies, but other than that, everything else is at least manageable. Make sure to get out of the Crusade rooms as fast as possible to prevent them from getting dragged around. 75 speed should make this pretty easy. There really isn't much to say about this class. Next we have Samurai. Samurai is okay. You're pretty beefy since you have heavy armor, so Oryx rooms aren't a problem. 55 speed is again better than 50, but not by much. You still have huge problems with Crusades. Taking in the new slowing walkie could be really helpful for this, but it might be kind of hard to use. Overall, it's still doable, but definitely low C tier. Now we have D and F- tier. I would not recommend rushing on any of these classes unless you just want a serious challenge. These classes are overall just terrible. First off, we have Sork. There are only two things that keep Sork from being at the very bottom of the list: 60 speed and full me. You have to use grotto rooms to full heal and take golem and oryx rooms slowly and focus on dodging. For Crusades, you need to drag them away from where you want to go and then book it through the room and the next room as fast as possible to keep it from chasing. Full me would definitely help. Slowing the Crusade should be enough to keep you from dragging it. Next up is Huntress. Huntress is pretty terrible. Slow traps are at least helpful for Crusades, and on testing the Crusades were not paralyze immune. So if you had a C-trap, you could para, which would make Huntress at least better than Sork. The same tips that I gave for Sork also apply to Huntress, and in addition, I would recommend not shooting while you're in Oryx or Golem rooms, as you do enough damage to pull the minions, and that can just be annoying. Lastly for D tier, we have Archer. Archer is basically the same as Huntress, but it has one issue which makes it just strictly worse. Quiver is an AoE, meaning you can't slow or para an entire crew all at once. You just have to try to snipe the commander. Everything else that was said about Huntress also applies here. I will briefly mention that if you have the Archer set is easily high B tier, as you have a lot of defense, you have a lot of HP, and Speedy helps you outrun the Crusades, plus the Quiver also slows. And now we jump all the way down to F- tier for Wizard. Wizard is cheeks, hot, steamy cheeks. It has absolutely nothing going for it. Nothing helpful for rushing whatsoever. Every other class has at least one thing that helps with rushing, but not Wizard. You're a robe class with 25 defense and 50 speed. You have no way to slow or para. All you have is damage, which most of the time is just harmful. Since this is the worst class, naturally we spent a lot more time messing with rushing on it than anything else. So I have a few extra tips for people who want to try the challenge of rushing on Wizard. Don't think that you can run through something. Unless you have 6 health pots, you cannot. Do not shoot or spellbomb except to kill bats which are following you, and to try to kill some of the Crusade minions off of Crusades which you will inevitably drag with you as you rush. If you shoot in Golem and Oryx rooms, you'll cause minions to run at you, which is just going to cause more problems. Try to get Crusades caught on the corner of rooms if you can, to keep them from chasing. This doesn't work most of the time. You have to use both Oryx and Grotto rooms to heal. Move through them slowly and focus on dodging. Drink health pots even when you don't think you need them, and hope that you can just get more pots from the next pot room. Hope to God that you also get some health and def tinks. And lastly, just don't rush on Wizard. That wraps up the tier list. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you don't agree with something on this list, please feel free to comment and tell me why. And quickly, I just want to mention that I'll be uploading 2 videos in the near future of Volibear and I's adventure of attempting to rush on Wizards. So if you're interested in seeing that, just check back in a couple of days and I'll probably have the videos posted by then. Anyways, thanks for watching and I'll see you in another video. Peace.